Mississippi is breaking new ground for business at a historic pace. Amazon, XAI, Toyota, Milwaukee Tool, and GE Aerospace have all tapped into our deep talent pool, prime geographic location, and welcoming communities. This is bigger than megasites. Mississippi offers a thriving business ecosystem with affordability, greater collaboration with energy partners, and record-breaking speed to market. Looking to expand? Break new ground at Mississippi.org.
Today, we celebrate America's 250th birthday. Just before this historic day, I was invited to talk to a group of veterans and their families at American Legion Post 62 in Marion County, Tennessee. On this episode, I talk about the importance of telling the stories of Vietnam veterans on this very important Independence Day. My name is Josh Roe, and this is Tomorrowtown, Tennessee.
Let's give Josh Roe a big Marion County welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today with you. I've been telling stories about veterans for a while now, and the thing that happens a couple of times a year, I'll open up Facebook or social media or something, and I'll see somebody has posted a story I've done from some time back, and it's normally a family member, and you're getting in, you read it, and it's, my papa was the greatest man I knew, or I miss my daddy. He meant the world to me. He's my best friend. When you see that stuff, it's not about a story anymore. It's not about a report anymore, right? You're talking to somebody's family, and you make those stories. You click on that link, and you can see that warrior who's not here anymore telling those stories of what they did in World War II or Korea or Vietnam. And that's the most rewarding thing in the world. I'm not posting that stuff for somebody to click on it and watch it. I do that for that family. So they've got that record that will live forever. If we don't capture the story, we don't tell the stories and capture the stories, when they're gone, we've lost something. So it's on not just what I do, but all of us that we have in the family to make sure that we record this stuff and that we remember what they did and why. Last year we celebrated 250 years of the Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps, and that leads us up to this weekend, right? And we celebrate our independence, and that's very specific, right? But there's all the things that have kept us a great country in the 250 years since, all the sacrifices made. And you think about how many people in here serve their country in the military, right? So whether you're drafted or you enlist, you sign that contract. And when you write your name on that line, it is wherever you want to send me, whatever you want to do with me, I'm agreeing to that. And we're not in a competition to who's more American than somebody else, but what's more American than that? Serving your country and saying, whatever you want to do with me, let's do it. And I know everybody in this room who either served or somebody they loved served, and that's why you're here today. And that matters. You matter. Your story matters. And it's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done to tell these stories. And 2 days ago, the 1st of July, was 13 years for me at the TV station. And when I was hired, before I even walked in the door, they called me on the phone and they're like, well, when you come, we want you to focus on a certain area of your reporting. What are you interested in? And I, first thing, veterans. And they were on board from the very beginning of that. No hesitation whatsoever. Like, yes, go do that. But I didn't really have a plan. I really didn't know what I wanted to say. I knew I wanted to talk about veterans, but I didn't really have a great idea of what I really wanted to say. And so doing a few stories and whatnot, I landed on, something was pretty obvious, right? It's 2013 at this point, and I'm realizing that World War II generation, not gonna be here very much longer. So I was kind of on a race against time to capture as many of those stories as I could. About 5-6 years into that list was getting shorter, and I can't find a whole lot of more World War II veterans. There's still some. I still find some today. Sometimes I haven't talked to yet, but it's pretty rare these days. So I'm about 5 and 6 years into that, and I'm starting to think, okay, where does this this series go from here? What's the next big focus of all this? This is 2017, 2018, 2019. And I really didn't have a great answer for exactly what I wanted to focus on after that. But in 2018, I go to a Vietnam Veterans of America meeting in East Ridge, chapter 203. And I walk in, sit down in the back of the room. I'm just listening just to see what's going on. And they say, well, there's these two guys that want to speak today. And these two gentlemen stand up. This is 2018. This is around September 2018. Two gentlemen stand up, and one of them starts telling the story about the other guy. And he's talking about a rescue in Vietnam where he landed a helicopter in the middle of a firefight and saved 4 men's lives, 4 alerts' lives. And that man was Larry Taylor. I never met Captain Taylor at that point. And I hear the story, and it's a phenomenal story. And then they start telling what they're trying to do. He got a Silver Star for that action. And they're trying to upgrade that Silver Star to a Medal of Honor. And at this point, they're early in the process. And to even get that packet moving forward, they need 2 eyewitnesses. They had one of the guys on the ground, Dave Hill. They needed another eyewitness. And so there was a man named Gerald Patty from Maryville that they didn't know where he was. They couldn't find him. Wasn't sure if he's alive, just didn't know. And so they were in the room just trying to get anybody who might know who Gerald Patty was. And maybe somebody could help them find him. And turned out he had already passed away. They just didn't know it at the time. But I was sitting there listening to that story, and like, man, that is a phenomenal story. And so wait till the meeting's over, go and talk to him and tell them who I am, what I want to do. And they huddle together, and they start talking to each other, and they come out, and they said, well, we're early in the process, and we're kind of afraid, if you do any media right now, it might mess up our chances of making this happen. I understand that. He said, but Captain Taylor's health is not great. He had some battles with cancer at that point. And, but we'd love for you to do the interview and just hold on to it for a while. And it's not a normal request, but I'd heard the story and knew what was going on. And I was like, well, okay, I'll do that. And so I go to Larry Taylor's house, about an hour and a half conversation. And it's the day I'll never forget. I mean, a fascinating human being. He hilarious. When he passed away, I was talking to General Bill Raines about him, and he said he was a real life John Wayne. Is what he said, and it kind of rings true. He was a tough guy, but he's very approachable and likable, And he tells me the story of what happened on June 18th of '68 when he saved those 4 alerts. And tells me a bunch of other war stories. And we talk and talk and talk. And I start asking about being a Vietnam veteran. And his demeanor changes. And he says to me, for most of my life, I felt like a second-class citizen. And I'm looking on the man's wall as he's telling me this, and I see his shadow box. This man did 1 tour in Vietnam, August of '67 to August of '68. In that shadow box, there was a Silver Star that would be upgraded to the Medal of Honor eventually. There was a Distinguished Flying Cross. He had 4 of those. There was a Bronze Star. And there were 44 air medals. So this man had a year, right? 52 weeks out of a year, a little bit longer than a year. I think a year, a couple weeks is what he ended up serving. He got there, he flew Hueys because the Cobras weren't flying yet. They sent him to Benoit for a couple of weeks to learn the Cobra. Starts flying the Cobra. So those 2 weeks he was training, he was not doing missions. But that's 50 combat decorations. Just in that, there was more than that. And so he's averaging more than 1 a week. And he said, I don't know what the record is, but I've never met anybody who had more than that in one tour. And I've not either. That's a lot. That's doing something. And so the man who got 1 combat decoration a week more than that is telling me he's felt like a second-class citizen. It's just wrong. Just wrong. And we keep talking. And he talks about going on one of those honor flights. Went up to Knoxville and took an honor flight to D.C. They take you to all the monuments and do all that stuff and celebrate you and all that. And he comes back to Knoxville and lands at the airport there in Alcoa. And he said they were lining the concourse as they were getting off the plane, cheering for him. And he's telling me this story. And the real life John Wayne, right? He's crying like a baby. He's like just streaming down his face telling his story. And you see the emotion of all that, of 50 plus years since the war and feeling all the things he's felt and feeling overlooked and not appreciated. And about 5 years later, he finally got the Medal of Honor. But there was a process, right? And so from that day, when I talked to him, I'm holding on to that video. We're not doing anything with it because they asked me not to. And so 1 year goes by and I see him and talk to him and whatever, but still working on it. 2 years go by, they're still working on it. Third year, they finally call me and say, hey, we want you to run that story. It's hit a snag and we don't think it's moving forward. Maybe some media might help us out. I'd never held a story for 3 years in my life. I didn't tell my bosses about it. I don't know if they'd let me do it if I asked them if I could do that. I have no idea. I just squirreled it away and I'm not telling anybody because I knew how special it was. And so we put it out there. I don't know how much the story, helped or anything, but I was honored to do it. Finally got the Medal of Honor in 2023. But in the period from 2018 to 2021, when I didn't run that story on the air, I would speak to crowds and groups like this, and I would tell the story of Larry Taylor because it's just an amazing story. And I was in a group, we're at a church, a bunch of retired folks and whatnot, and tell the story, a bunch of other stories. And a woman comes up to me and says, I don't like hearing stories about the Vietnam War. And not trying to argue with the lady or anything, and nice lady. I'm not trying to be negative about her at all, but I was trying to understand her, And I said, well, tell me about that. Why do you not like to hear those stories? And she says, well, politics of the time, the protests of the time, and we, I knew some young men who went and fought the war, didn't come home. I knew some who went and fought the war, came home different man, and it's just hard, And I said to her, I was like, well, it's hard on those veterans too. And she said, I get that. I said, when you hear a story about like Captain Taylor, do you not think that kind of story needs to be heard and remembered and understood? She said, well, stood her ground. It just makes me uncomfortable. I wrestled with that for a while. Like, okay, so what do I do with that information, right? And today I'll post some stuff on YouTube and you'll get some comments that are a little sideways or whatever. And you're like, what do you do with that, right? What I did, I just kept telling the stories. And I was sitting in our conference room at the station talking to a man named J.C. Pemberton, who lived in Scottsboro here, not far from here. And we're sitting across from each other, kind of in a corner of a conference room. There's a cameraman right here, camera and a cameraman right here. There's a long table behind us. And Mr. Pemberton brought his daughter and his grandson with him. And they're sitting back behind me back here. But the camera's kind of blocking my view, so I can't see him during the interview. We talked for more than an hour. Army, infantry, for a year, every step he took, he was scared for his life. I mean, some fascinating stuff and great interview. And normally, if I'm in a room, somebody's brought some family in or whatever, at the end of it, I'm going to turn to them and say, is there some story that we didn't talk about that you've heard through your life you want him to talk about, whatever? And I'm turning around and I can't see him. I'm going to crane my neck to see him because the camera's here. And I see the daughter and her face is tomato red and she's been crying the whole time. And she says, I've never heard those stories before. He's never told those stories before. And you realize through that kind of stuff, and I've heard that several times, that not only do the stories need to be told, they're important to be told. And again, it's not about all the people outside that family. It's about the people, the veteran who lived that, how they came home, how they dealt with it, how their children feel about it, the things that they've gone through, seeing that father, mother at some point, obviously now, who have struggled with these things and how they've interacted with that and the problems that's caused their family and all of the layers of all of that. That stuff needs to be understood. It needs to be known. There's so many stories of pain and healing that have never been told that just need to be told. 2024, as Bill mentioned, I went to Vietnam a couple of times. 2024, I went to Vietnam the first time. And I was there with a family of a Medal of Honor recipient who was killed in action. September of '67, Operation Swift, rough battle. And the man was named Rodney Maxwell Davis, Sergeant Rodney Maxwell Davis. He was on embassy duty in London. He had a great job, and he volunteers to go fight in Vietnam. They're like, why would you volunteer? You got the best job that we have. Or, this is an amazing post. Like, I've trained to be a Marine, and I want to go fight. He was there for 2 weeks, Operation Swift. One platoon's in trouble. His platoon gets sent in to help out. They go around the right flank of that platoon that's in trouble, and they're in a bomb crater, right? A big duck out area, and they're in there for cover, and they're fighting in this crater, and it's intense, and they're getting walloped. And as it's going, keeps going, it's a long fight. They're looking back in the crater, and there's more guys shot, and there are more guys on the ground, and the soil of the crater is turning red from bloodshed in that crater, and they're shooting out over the top of it, right? And they start getting closer. Enemy's getting closer, and the grenades start coming in, and grenade is going to blast, right? And it's kind of an up and out kind of a thing, kind of a mushroom kind of a thing, right? So grenade would fall on the floor of that crater, and they would roll out on the lip of the crater, let it detonate, roll back in the crater, stay in a fight. And that happened several times. Eventually, at some point, 2 grenades come at the same time. One at the bottom of the crater and one on the lip of the crater where they're jumping out. They got nowhere to go. The one on the lip of the crater detonates first. So, okay, they got a few seconds left before the second one goes off. The grandson of the platoon commander was there on the trip with us, and he told me this. He said, this is what his grandfather said. He said that first one goes off, and they realize they've got a few seconds before this next goes off. And he says they start to climb out of that crater, and he remembers kind of like, bracing for something, but he's not looking at it, right? And he just hears a thud. And he realizes that is not what that should have sounded like. And he looks back, and Sergeant Davis has jumped on that grenade. And he saved the lives of 5 Marines that day. He'd only been in Vietnam for 2 weeks when he did that. The man right beside him, man named Randy Leadham, had been in the hospital with malaria his first day back. He didn't even know that man. Sergeant Davis grew up in Macon, Georgia. He was an African-American man. It was during, segregation and all that. Never went to school with a white student. All 5 of those Marines were white Marines. It's just so many fascinating layers to that story. We go there in 2024, 58 years to the day after that happened. I'm there with one of his daughters, who was 1 when he left for Vietnam, barely knew her father, and I'm seeing healing in real time. She and her cousins are there, standing in the spot where her father lost his life in the Vietnam War, Medal of Honor recipient, American hero. And you see things like that, and you think about not telling those stories. There's no way. There's no way those stories don't need to be told. I'll finish on this one. One of the days we were there in Vietnam that first time, one of the guys that was with us was with the 1-5 Marines, fought inside the Citadel, the Battle of Waste City. We go to Waste City, and I spent some time with him there, and it sparked an interest in Waste City. And so I've done a lot of long-form reporting on Waste City. Very important battle in Vietnam. Some would say the most important battle. And there's a man at East Ridge, Larry Lewis, who was there as well. And so I've spent a lot of time with Larry over the last couple years, just trying to understand what that was like, what it was like to be there. And I've gone and I've asked, sometimes you get these conversations and you ask the same question 20 times in a different way. You want more details. I want to understand it. It's not like I'm just asking a question to ask it. I want to understand it. So I'm picking through things. This man spent decades trying to forget that he was even in Vietnam. And here I am, 50 some odd years later, trying to get him to remember all that stuff. And he wants to do it. I'm not twisting his arm or anything. He wants to tell the story. And great guy, great stories, and pack up. Been talking to him for more than an hour. Pack up, start to leave. He walks me out to my car, and I just said, "I appreciate your patience. You sitting there, let me ask you all those questions that I'm sure were not easy to answer, and just talking to me." And I said, "Your story matters." And he looked at me and he said, "For most of my life, I was certain it did not matter. That That's why you tell the stories. His service matters. All of your service matters. Your story matters. And it's an honor to be here with you as we get ready to celebrate this 250th birthday tomorrow. We wouldn't be where we are as a country without your sacrifices. And I mean the veterans and the families and the people who've sacrificed to make these things happen. So thank you for being on this earth, and thank you for being in this room. Your presence matters, and your service definitely matters. So I hope you have a great Independence Day, and thanks for letting me be here today. God bless America. Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
And thank you for listening to Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. This podcast is a production of News Channel 9, Fox Chattanooga, and Sinclair Broadcast Group Chattanooga. I hope you join me again real soon.